Hello there. I have not used my phone for this before. So, while you're precariously bounced on the back bumper of my Bronco out in the backyard, I've been asked some questions, and I have recently started competition shooting, and I've learned a lot quickly. And while I am far from an expert, I feel like A, the best way for me to learn things is to teach them to you, and B, while I am far from an expert, I do have knowledge, and the more the better, right? For anyone and everyone. I'm going to talk today about stance. Before it starts raining, it's December 1st, and it's almost cold here in Arizona. I've learned a whole lot, a bit here and a bit there over the past 3-4 months. Damn, it is raining. I better hurry up. Over the past couple of months from various shooters that I've, talked to at competition. And I learned so much so I got a whole new belt. And so this isn't going to be talking about gear. This is purely about stance. But at the very least, I want to tell you to get a belt. Something rigid so that you can move around and all your stuff isn't going to bounce and fall out and whatnot. Even if you have to get handmade custom camo pouches for your LARPing from your homies. That's not the point though. I have my demo gun. And we're going to talk about stance. I'm going to start at the bottom and work up. You want your feet shoulder width, maybe slightly shoulder width apart, square to your target, camera, whatever you're shooting at. That way you're more naturally oriented and your knees are not locked. You're leaning your knees forward a little bit, you're kind of leaning forward, the weight on the balls of your feet. You have a positive stance. That way recoil, pushing you back, pushes you from positive to neutral instead of from neutral to negative. So you stay leaning forward, aggressive, knees bent, weight on the balls of your feet. That way you're ready to do stuff and you are still capable of leaning into pushing back from that recoil. I heard one person talk about how they imagine that they're a hawk and they have talons and they're just digging their claws into the ground. I mean, granted, we're wearing shoes, safety first, but it's that kind of mental aggressive imagery, kind of keeping things engaged. Next, moving up higher, we'll talk about shoulders, chest, back. Again, keeping everything square to the target. So as you're engaging, camera's too low. This is going to work anyway. As you're engaging, it's not just my arms, my elbows, my wrists, my hands. The grip is coming from everything. Leave your core loose so you can breathe, even if it makes you look fat. But your shoulders, your chest, and your back, you want to flex all of that. You engage all of it, helping hold your arms distance from you. You don't want your arms all the way maximum extension. That's making a longer lever, letting the same amount of forces give more to act on. You want to be a little, not right here. You're not doing the center axis relock. We're not trying to be John Wick. But you don't want to be, super close. You got to be able to see your sights, but you can't be all the way out either, because that's giving too much leverage. So, maybe kind of in the middle. Think of if you're trying to crush something, if you're squeezing, you're pressing your two hands together as hard as you can. It's a whole lot easier to press harder the closer you are in. So, that's where we're going to work from. Your hand, with a basic grip, makes an L shape, right? And your wrist is going to be locked nice and firm, making an L shape. And now you've got this L shape for your other hand with your wrist locked to fill that L shape. That way you can get as much skin touching as much surface area of your firearm as possible. That way you're squeezing nice and firm, but not too hard. Because if you're squeezing, maximum, you're going to start shaking. I don't know if you can see that. And you squeeze as hard as you can, and you're going to shake a little bit. Think of it as you just caught a snake. You've got a snake by the head. You don't want to kill the snake, but you don't want him to come around and bite you neither. So, you have a firm, 80, 90% grip, but not, shaking 110% maximum. You're also, some people will talk about, gripping, 70, 80% with the support hand, and not, maximum grip with your strong hand. And I don't know why. Wouldn't you want maximum grip from both hands? So that's what I'm going to do. Maximum grip, both hands, all the way in. Now, on the balls of your feet shoulder width are slightly wider apart, knees bent, chest, shoulders, the muscles across your shoulders on your back, all, flexed and engaged at that medium distance, not all the way out. Another thing a lot of people will do is, they just stick their gun in, and now you've got your elbows, right? Like we talked about all those L's. Your wrists are locked, but your elbows aren't. You're going to bend, making, albeit a shorter lever than your whole arm, but it is still a lever giving your weapon and recoil something to act against. So that's why in some cases you will see it's kind of goofy looking, but people with their elbows rotated further out, at least from my point of view, my elbows are higher than my wrists. But now, because the joints have rotated, and instead of, bending this way, they have to bend this way. And, it's easier to push this way, and because, the joints only move in one direction, they can't physically bend up. So again, that's taking away a mechanism from the recoil, the physics preventing you from moving in a direction you don't want your weapon to move. That way, you're going to stay down and level, and you're not going to get any of this flip because your wrists are locked, your elbows are locked, and it's going to stay right here. So you'll be on target. Your sights, whether you've got irons or a dot optic, I don't know what you're running, on what gear you have. But that way you can keep your sights on target, so that way you're ready for the next shot as soon as the weapon is. Talking about the weapon and firing, look to the trigger itself. A lot of people, being a left-handed dominant righty, I can, I'll call myself ambidextrous, so I will demonstrate for camera purposes with my left hand. You don't want to come all the way off of the trigger, as some people far greater than I would say. You don't want to give it air. You want to ride the reset. You're not going to come all the way back off and then slap it, because that's going to make a jerking motion. So you're going to stay on the trigger and ride the reset, because you can hear that click. Okay? I've got all this travel. I gotta hurry up before the rain gets any worse. Now, as I was saying, trigger must be not slapped. Don't give it any air. Don't let it relax. You're going to ride to that reset. And that way, you've only got, it'll be different for every firearm, but you've only got that partial distance to travel. You don't have to run the whole length of the whole trigger, especially for, if this was a real Beretta 92, running a double action would be nasty. But a double action trigger being longer, heavier, in order to get the same kind of accuracy without waving it around because of your trigger squeeze, is going to make you a better shooter. So perhaps as a training tool, but personally, I would not run as my main. I know there's a lot of different things about where, how you would grip the trigger. Some people say just a little bit. Some people are going to say to, get that booger hook all the way onto the bank switch. I'm going to tell you at least what I do. You've got a little point down here at the bottom. Like I've been talking about levers a lot, using the whole length of the trigger as a lever because they pivot up here. And because it's easy to feel, easy to tell when I'm on or off, I like to get the sensitive pad, the tip of my finger, onto the bottom hook of the trigger there. That way I'm using as much of that length of that lever as possible. So that way, even if it is the same weight pull, it is that much less working energy for me to do. So, it's going to make it a longer pull, but it's going to be a lighter pull. And that's just what I do. You do you. I've seen people that have made very weird things work. My brother, for example, running a bullpup rifle with a very heavy trigger, is one of those people that gets his booger hook all the way around that bang switch, and it makes me sick. But he hit stuff with it. But me personally, I'm gonna run on the tip, just the tip, and that reset. There you go. So I've got that much travel that I'm not going to be moving, as long as you ride the reset. I think that's everything, at least for starters, for basics. Before the rain gets any worse. Wrist. One last thing. A lot of people, especially older shooters, are going to tell you, have your arm, your gun in line this way. That way, your arm is straight, to absorb the recoil this way. And, well, that's also, making a lever. And I've been talking about locking wrists. You can lock your wrist in multiple directions simultaneously, not just out and down, but this way. And so that way your weapon, if your arm is straight, your weapon's over here. It's off center. You got to move your head to find the weapon. Don't do that. You're off center. You're unnatural in moving your head around and stuff. So not only are we locking our wrist this way, we're locking our wrist this way. And because we're not, all the way maximum extension straight like we were talking about, but elbows bent and up. Look at that. Right in line with the sternum, right in the middle. So now we're going to see our sights just fine. So we don't want, you're going to come up this way. Be center line for that, instinctual point shooting short range, this 3 to 5 feet I've got here. That's going to be perfect for you. If you're, wrist straight and off center, it just feels unnatural to me. But a lot of people, I've seen people still do the teacup and it just, cringe. Don't be off center. If you're moving your head to get to the sight, don't do that. It's that much more movement, that much stuff you don't have to do. Center, wrist locked, multiple directions, other wrist locked. Even like before you draw, you can have your wrist pre-locked. So that way, as you're drawing, right, you're standing down here, your wrist is already locked, and you draw, all you have to do is present the gun to the hand. Your hand's already ready. Saving an extra step there. Let's talk about moving your head to the sights. If you're moving your head to see where you're aiming, you're wasting time. So, if transitioning from targets, I've got one tail light, passenger side tail light on my 86 Bronco over here. And I'm going to transition to the driver's side tail light. If you move your hands, now you're going to move your head to keep in line with those sights. You're moving two things. You've got multiple moving parts that you have to keep lined up, and it's harder to do. Just like, with iron sights, it's harder to keep a front sight lined up with a rear sight compared to a red dot where it's just one sight to line up. That's why red dots are a little bit faster. So, in order for that extra little bit faster, rain's hurrying up. Instead of moving your hands and then your head to stay on track, you've got multiple moving pieces. Remember I was talking about, being aggressive and moving because you're on the balls of your feet and you're ready to move. So you move your whole body. You keep your chest, your shoulders, your arms, your wrists. All of that is locked, right? As we've been saying the whole time. L's locked in place. Lots of L's. You're moving your whole body when you transition from target to target. So you have one side, and then you pivot on your foot, other side. Right? Think of yourself as a turret. Right? The whole thing is going to move. And that way, you're keeping your sights lined up, and it's going to work that much better for you. You won't have to spend that extra half a second moving your head around to find the spot to get on your sights again after you move, because it's all stayed locked together as a unit. Now, this isn't something I normally do, so I'm going to cut it there and see you in the next one. Party hardy. Like, comment, subscribe. Obligatory YouTube stuff. Wink, wink.